Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America on the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network. Great to have you with us on the program today. You can find out information on the show, including our guest, at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. As mentioned, our guest on the show, Donald McLean. He's with us today, author of Unraveling Charlie. His story of what happens when a victim of sexual abuse goes back to question his molester. Donald McLean on This Week in America. Don, welcome to the program. Great to have you with us.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks for having me.
I'd like to talk about, in just a second here, at age 12, you're abused sexually by a school teacher, and we'll go into detail on that. But I want to go back to where this whole book idea, it's fascinating where the whole book idea came from. And you're sitting around on a Sunday morning, which you usually do with your wife, and it's your chance to get caught up on everything and kick topics back and forth. And she says, okay, before this is over with, I'm sure we're going to be talking about Charlie. That was the name of the school teacher who molested you. And out of that conversation grew the book, as I understand it.
That's correct. What happens is my wife and I like to sit around. We always book Sunday morning to see each other. And sometimes we talk for a couple of minutes. Sometimes we talk a long time. But what she mentioned to me, because this has been over, I've been married for 25 years. I'm 58 years old. This was over for over 40 years. And she just mentioned, she said to me, you know, if we talk long enough, we always end up discussing Charlie. And it was something I didn't realize. I thought that this was completely behind me. I thought that I wrote in the book, in the beginning when we were married 25 years ago, I would tell her about it. But it was something that I thought was over and done with. And when she told me that, I really had to stop and think about why I was still bringing it up all of these years later. And we talked about that. And, I said to her, what do you think I should do? And my wife has been in therapy. She liked it. She felt she got something out of it. I never did go back when this happened. It was the late 60s and early 70s. Therapy wasn't as prevalent then. People really didn't know about pedophiles then. It was a completely different time. So I kind of figured the answers I had to find out I got myself. But what she said to me was, if you're not going to go to therapy about it and it's 40 years later, why don't you write a book and see what happens? And as I wrote in the book, once I started writing, I couldn't stop.
Well, and so basically the book was your therapy that really allowed you to go through it and deal with all your feelings.
Well, I have to tell you something that's very interesting. I was sitting here yesterday. This was yesterday this happened. And my wife was supposed to meet me about 8 o'clock at night somewhere. And I don't know where it came from, but I wrote the book and got it published a year ago. And I called her up and I said to her, do you know that since I wrote the book, we'll talk about the book, but we don't talk about Charlie anymore? And for whatever reason, both of us were like, yeah, that's very true. I've stopped talking about him. We still talk every Sunday. It hasn't come up. The book has come up, but not him. And I think whatever I had that was still left in me from having to deal with this is now over and done with.
We're talking with Donald McLean on today's program. His book is Unraveling Charlie. His website is unravelingcharlie.com. You can go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link up and get all that information. The book is doing very, very well. It's available all across the country. Of course, you can find information on his website as well as at Amazon. And you referred to this as a fictionalized memoir and sort of explain that, but at the same time, you're saying all my feelings in here, the emotional content, is 100% accurate because I remember that like it was a recent happening.
I do. And other people who've been through the same thing will tell you the same thing. You don't forget the way that you felt. The reason when I went to get the book published, the agent that I got asked me if the book was true. And I said to her about 70% of it is completely accurate. About 30% of it is not fiction, but I don't have a problem with disclosing that this happened to me, but there were other people involved, and I just didn't think it was fair to give out their names or implicate them in any way because, especially with molestation, it's a very difficult subject for a lot of people, and I just did not feel it was fair to drag in anybody else who was involved in it. The book, there were adults around. People have asked me many times, why didn't they pick up on this? Why couldn't people see it? And it was almost like they were blaming the adults around me. And I didn't feel that way. I felt that because this was such a long time ago, people were so unaware of Um, Even the fact that, in 1960, the late 60s and the early 70s, gay people weren't even acknowledged, let alone pedophiles.
Well, yeah, and you do an excellent job in the book, Unraveling Charlie, of setting the scene for us. And when you think back to the late 60s, the early 1970s, it was a whole different time. I mean, you didn't pick up a newspaper every day where there was talk of sexual abuse. It's just something that maybe you knew was there, but you really didn't address it.
No, and the reason that I called it fictionalized, I wrote in the foreword, everything up to me at 15 years old was completely accurate, 100% accurate. I didn't want to take the focus of the book off of Charlie and I. And after I was 15 and 16 and 17 and 18, other people and other events happened to me that impacted my life. But I didn't want to go off on a tangent having to explain other parts of my life. I wanted to keep the focus of the book on what happened to Charlie and I. And the book is emotionally 100% correct. Some of the conversations, some of the events may have happened over a longer period of time. I mean, I would take 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 conversations that may have happened over a year. And in order to make the book readable, I would break them down to one conversation in one time and place and one event. So that's why I called it a fictionalized memoir instead of complete 100% memoir.
The book is Unraveling Charlie. It's available at unravelingcharlie.com. Donald McLean, our guest on This Week in America. Again, information you can link on at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. It's interesting because you start off and you say, and this still is some confusion in the minds of some people, there is a difference between a pedophile and homosexuality. And you're very clear in making that distinction for people at the beginning of the book.
I couldn't get my gay friends mad at me. And there is a huge difference. The man was not a homosexual. The man was a pedophile. He wasn't attracted to other men. I remember as an adult asking him, why didn't, this is when I've lived in New York City most of my life, or around New York City most of my life. And I remember asking him, why didn't you just go into Greenwich Village and, find a man? And he said to me, I'm not attracted to men. I did. He said, it doesn't do anything for me. And, at this point, science, medicine, they make a very large distinction between pedophiles and homosexuals. And I did want to make it very clear. I don't want people getting the impression that I felt in any way that homosexuality had anything to do with this, because it didn't. This man was attracted to children. And I don't think that I would call a man who's attracted to 12-year-old girls a heterosexual. Heterosexual is somebody who's attracted to somebody who's, the same age and,
right.
and the same, can reciprocate in a relationship.
Right.
And he couldn't. He basically thought young boys were having relationships with him. He was very, very disturbed man. Especially when I went back to find answers from him, which is the thing that a lot of people, which is one of the reasons that the book is getting some attention, is because most people don't do that. But because of the time and because of the place, I really didn't have a choice. If I wanted to get answers, I had to go back and find the answers from him. And I didn't become his friend. I stayed a neutral observer who didn't criticize. And as I got to know him more and more as an adult, I understood more and more that I found him to be, anybody would have found him to be mentally ill. He felt he was having a relationship with a 12-year-old boy and a 13 and a 14 and a 15-year-old boy. He was not attracted to women. He was not attracted to men. He was attracted to children. So I did put that in there in the very beginning of the book because I wanted to make people understand I don't equate pedophilia with homosexuality at all. And I don't have any problem with homosexuality. If you're born that way, you're born that way. That's the way I've always felt about it.
Most of the people who write a book like this, who go back and recount their experiences, in stories you hear, there's rage, there's anger. And this is maybe the first time I'm aware where there's actually understanding that you're able to bring out in the book.
Towards the end of the book, there was a lot of rage and anger in the beginning and the middle of the book.
Right.
But I think the point of the book was that I did in order to help myself, I guess, learn how to overcome those feelings, I did have to go back and find out why it happened. And as I found out more, and as I learned more, and as I got older, I was able to put aside a lot of those feelings because I did understand that there was something wrong with this man. And somewhere in the book, towards the end, I wrote, you know, and I think this is true for most people who are normal. I don't have it in me to hate the crippled or the sick. I just don't. I don't think most people do. If you find somebody that has something wrong with them, whether it's physically or mentally or emotionally, most of the time people's reaction is that they feel sorry for the person. They try to understand. They try to grasp what's going on and make allowances for it. And I would certainly never condone or say that somebody who's a pedophile should be anything but locked up if they continue to do it. But I did come to the point where I understood that he really was mentally ill. I'm not. And with understanding does come, you get to understand that he was doing things, that he was not a rational person and he wasn't in his right mind. And I guess I let a lot of the anger and the rage go slowly over time because I did come to understand that.
Well, you can sort of see that happens at the book where you end up at this point of understanding. Time is going way too quickly. I want to go back just briefly and talk about your age 12. You're in school. This all starts with a very innocent, "Hi, Don, how are you?" from Charlie, the teacher. And your sister, I believe, had him for class, but you didn't even know that he knew who you were.
No, I didn't think he knew who I was. He was my older sister's teacher. My sister was 2 years older than me. And he took an interest in her. She was a good student. He was an excellent teacher. I mean, people went out of their way to try to get their children into his classroom. And my mother and father loved him. He tutored my sister, and he helped her, and he turned her from a A and a B and maybe a C student into a straight A student. He was an excellent teacher. So when I was supposed to have him, they were thrilled. And then what happened was, because it was the middle of the baby boomers, they came in, and I was supposed to be scheduled to have him as my teacher. And the classes were so large, they split the classes up, and I ended up getting a different teacher. But he must have remembered me. I wrote in the book, I don't, to deal with as an adult, and one of the things you have to learn to deal with is ambiguity, because I'll never know why he picked me out of all the other kids. As I wrote in the book, part of the reason was I didn't stand out. I wasn't good academically. I was good at sports, and so were a lot of other kids. I was a good-looking enough kid. It's hard to not be attractive when you're 12,
Yes.
It's one of the things you learn to live with. I don't have any idea why he did pick me out. I know that in the beginning of the book, what I wrote was that he had me and two other boys, I guess, auditioning. He would take us to the beach. And I guess those other two boys didn't make the cut because he ended up focusing on me. One of the things you have to understand about pedophiles is that they don't ever really see you as real people. I did come to understand that later on. If it wasn't me, it would have been another child. And they reel you in by making you feel like you're special. They set up this whole fantasy of what a wonderful, special human being child you are. And you have to remember, I came from a family of 5. Good, steady family, really good, steady parents. But when you're one of 5, you're one of 5. When the predator puts his spotlight on you, suddenly you're the center of the universe. It's very intoxicating for a child, and that's how they get you.
Moving ahead, and we're about out of time, but a couple of minutes left here. You're 15 and a half, and you're saying in the book that you're emotionally exhausted. And the one thing that you knew you were lacking at that point was trust. And then you've got Lily. I don't know whether that was actually her name or you used it in the book.
I didn't use anybody's real name except my own.
This lady you say is Lily. It sounds like she really, really instrumental in you breaking out of this.
Well, as I wrote, she was the catalyst, not the cause. I was trying to find a way to get away from him. And I just didn't understand how much power and influence he had over me. I just couldn't get away. But after I spent the night with her when I was 15 and a half, I understood she's a very smart woman, and she asked the right questions. And people like that come into your life sometimes at the right time. And I got up the next morning understanding that the reason I felt the way that I did was because of him. I was too young to understand. Rick, you don't understand manipulation until you get old enough to manipulate yourself.
Right.
And you don't understand you're being manipulated because you're a child. Your parents manipulate you all the time. Adults do. Your mom and dad want the best for you. They'll manipulate you into doing the right thing. Well, child molesters don't want the best for you, but they manipulate you into doing what they want. And spending that night with her, having the conversations I did with her, really opened my eyes to the fact that a lot of the problems that I were having were because of him, and I wasn't able to see that before that night. But also, I was old enough. I put things together slowly. I've always done that. I take little hints here and little hints there. I don't have huge epiphanies. What I have is slowly collected data that all of a sudden I'll understand something. Everybody works differently. That's the way it's always worked for me.
The book is Unraveling Charlie. It's a story of abuse, survival, acceptance, understanding of his abuser's mental illness. The website is understandingcharlie.com. Donald McLean, our guest on the program. It has to be fulfilling for you and I understand you had friends and people that would look at the draft as you were progressing, and they suddenly were admitting, I have a story, a relative, or maybe even happened to me. It sort of made it okay to have this discussion. And I was
amazed. I was amazed. Even my sister told me, her best friend's older brother didn't rape her, but he kind of pinned her down and groped her. And, she'd never told me about that. And I'm very close to my sister. Other people, some of my wife and my best friends, I found out that the husband's father was molesting their daughter. It gave people a license to come forward and talk about things. And one of the things I found most gratifying is, and I'm very upfront about this, I didn't write the book for other people. I wrote the book for me. But what I'm finding as time goes out is it's really gratifying that other people have come forward and talked to me about it and maybe use the book a little bit to maybe help themselves to a certain extent. So, I'm very pleased with that part of it.
Well, you've done an excellent job. The book is Unraveling Charlie. His website is unravelingcharlie.com. He being Donald McLean, our guest on the program today. The book's available at Amazon all across the country. Of course, you can get information on the book at the website unravelingcharlie.com. Also, all that information at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. You can link up directly with Don's website. So much more to talk about. Don, we'll have you back on the program. Thank you so much. Congratulations on an excellent book that's touching a number of people, and we look forward to having you back on the program.
Thank you, Rick. It's been a pleasure.
You're listening to This Week in America on the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network.